next speaker is Chairperson of the Carlow County Board, and as a county manager you often get a lot of flack when you don't get results, but I think as a county chairman you're never right. So he has to deal with a lot of mental issues in that role. But Jim's been a great chairperson for Carlow, great chairman of Leinster Council, and I suppose if any organisation in the country, I suppose, represents, you know, some of the great values of the country, it is the GAA, because it's in every parish and how it bonds together. So I'll hand you over to Jim.
Thanks very much, Turlough, and thanks for the invite from Rita and the committee. It's great to hear Turlough praising the county chairman now that he's no longer county manager. It's welcome anytime, Turlough, so thanks very much. Mental health, men's mental health, anyone's, all of our mental health. I really welcome the fact that over the last 10 years or so that we're a lot more open about talking about mental health. Heretofore, it wasn't the case. I grew up in a different culture, and people of a certain age, I suppose, this would resonate with you, but you know, playing football as a young lad, playing a bit of hurling as a young lad, we were told to, you know, man up, take, you know, never show your weakness to the opposition, especially even if you got a bad belt, because they will gain from that. And that's the kind of culture we was, a macho, manly culture. And now we see it's so good to talk about problems, talk about issues, and that's to be welcomed across the board. And as Turlough said, like, the GAA is a mirror of society essentially, because we have our tentacles in every parish in the country and further afield. So it's great that we have supports in place, and when I talk about supports, we have a National Health and Wellbeing Committee. We've full-time people working in this space. We also have a diversity and inclusion officer that's been taken on in a full-time role over the last year or so. So that, I suppose, comes down to Leinster level and to club level, and every club, or we'd like to think every club, has a health and well-being officer. So what do we do? How do we help our people? Well, we've lots of ways of helping them, and even we take Sean after retiring from the high level he was at. We've lots of GAA players retire every day of the week for a variety of reasons. You know, and it can be through injury, but we need to help people and be able to support people as well. We've lots of members who have given up. They've known nothing, I suppose, for maybe 30 years or so, other than playing their sport that they love, be it hurling, football, or whatever the case may be. But what do we do? How do we fill the void when they're 39 or 40 or whatever age they are when they retire? We have to be there to support them. I think there's a space that we have to do more work on. But we have good supports through our network, as I said. We have various campaigns. We have age-friendly campaigns as well. And we have clubs who would organise maybe card games for a certain age of member on a weekly basis. They organise quiz nights from time to time. And in addition then, we have supports through psychologists, as we're aware of as well, through that kind of situation for helping players, but in the case, you know, supporting them to play at a high level and to help them in many different facets of their preparation for the sport that they were playing. Another issue, the advent of an issue that's caused lots of grief for our players, for our managers, and for our referees and so on, is the advent of social media. And while social media is very positive in many guises, it can be detrimental to the mental health and well-being, particularly of younger players, when we have these faceless people that go on and what they say is detrimental, as I said, to the mental health and well-being of our players. And we have to try and tackle that. Those people, I don't think ever played sport, or certainly if they did, if they played GAA, they would be able to empathise with our players and not put up what they put up and hide behind their faceless people. They wouldn't say that if they met the same player walking down the street, the same referee, or the same manager, they wouldn't say what they say online. So that is a massive issue for us. But prior to social media, we've had coaches, managers up and down looking after our juveniles, And words are very important, and what people say, particularly to young kids, is extremely important. And we have to be very mindful of that, and that's why we impress on our coaches the way to speak to people. And just a simple little trick would be to say something positive to a child, then say something constructive that they could view as being negative, and then have another positive. So it's a sandwich that you start with a positive and finish with a positive. Simple little trick. And stuff like that we do. But what Sean has talked there about, you know, what do we do for ourselves, for our own mental health and so on, but what we try and impress upon our members is to do 5 things, 5 a day, and the first thing to do is to engage with somebody else, to meet people and engage. Like, we shouldn't underestimate the importance of meeting another human being and talking to them. Extremely important. The second thing is we ask them to become active, so a little bit of exercise. And there's lots of research out there to suggest that exercise is very good for your mental health. Okay? The next thing we ask them to do is to be, I suppose, aware of your environment, wherever you are. If you're out for a walk, you're aware of the water, you're aware of the trees, or the sunlight coming through the leaves onto the ground. It's just to be aware of that and to be present. And finally then, the 5th one is to learn something maybe every day. And if we can do that, well then that can be very beneficial. Okay? I first came across a mental health issue when I was over a minor team, and many of you of a certain age might remember the Cars, and they had a song, My Best Friend's Girlfriend was the name of the song, okay? And I went to the dressing room and they were singing this, My best friend's girlfriend, but she used to be mine. That was the catch. So one player and his best friend had ended up with his girlfriend. Anyway, she ended up getting married to a guy from another club some years later, so everything was resolved. But at that particular time, it was very tough when you hear maybe the pack mentality where you have, you know, these people ganging up on one member of the team, and we had a big problem to solve, and we did resolve it. But that was my first exposure really to, I suppose, a gang mentality against one person. When we do create, I suppose, when we do create the awareness, and we're talking about mental health now, we're going to create a need for supports, and that's why the GAA is very important that we have the supports there, but we only go so far. So if we keep talking about mental health issues, which is great to do that, we're going to require wider supports, and perhaps on the panel will talk about this as well, where through the HSE or Mental Health Ireland or whatever the case may be, we're going to have to tap into those resources, because we have limited resources in dealing with the mental health issues that may arise. So I suppose that's a challenge for all of us in the future. If you're a player, you retire, we would like you to get involved in managing and coaching and so on. If you're a player and you're retired and you don't want to do that, we're always looking for volunteers. So you could work maybe as a club officer, county officer and so on, and work in admin as a volunteer, or you could maybe help to maintain pitches and maintain clubhouses. There's always a role for you there, but the one thing we have to do is to remember the great members that we had, and when they get to a certain age, to include them, to have the card nights, to have the social contact. And I think because of our systems, when COVID came, we were able to help. We were able to go and do shopping for our members. We were able to provide medication for them. But above all, we were able to provide some kind of contact for them. And indeed, a chap in Mayo that used to play for Mayo, he started a system where you could ring him or he'd ring you back and chat and shoot the breeze. And I think that was great, and I think it was very beneficial, as we all know how tough those couple of years were. But once again, I would have to say that the GAA stood up to the plate and made a difference. So that's it for me, folks. Thanks very much for listening, and I'll pass you back to Turlough.
Thanks very much, Jim. Some really interesting thoughts there, and if you were picked up on there, like words matter. I think that's something that we really do need to be careful about how we speak to people, especially young people, anybody involved with young teams. When you're a manager of a team, you have a lot of power. You're looked up to by young people, and they deserve treated with respect. And it's really, really important. It's not all about winning. It isn't. It actually isn't. It takes care of itself if you do everything else right. So I think that's really important. It's great to see the GAA, providing the support for past players and past committee members through their health and wellbeing officers and committees. And I know the GP are doing a lot of work for inter-county players. But the old days of the macho image of GAA is long gone, thank God. And I think we're a much more open, much more friendly organisation, I think, for our players and officials. That needs probably a bit more work. I'd be guilty there myself. And finally, Jim, just for my own mental health, it'd be great to hear that football is going first next year instead of hurling. Our next speaker is Dr.